including both functional and structural aspects, Table 10.1. The magnitude of risk reduction differed significantly across type of measurement approach examined. Although both structural, or equals 1.57, and functional measures, or equals 1.46, were significantly associated with greater odds of survival, specific measurement approaches within these broader categorizations varied in their predictive utility. Within functional support measures, support was a significant predictor of longevity, or equals 1.35, whereas received support was not, or equals 1.21. When examining structural measures, living alone, or equals 1.19, was the poorest predictor, and complex measures of social integration were the best predictor, or equals 1.91. Thus, assessments that took into account the multidimensional aspects of social relationships were associated with a 91% increased odds of survival. Taken altogether, these data suggest that both social networks and the social support they provide are important. Overall effects of social relationships on mortality may be a conservative estimate. Most studies made adjustments for initial health and other lifestyle risk factors to establish the independent influence of social connections on risk for mortality. However, social relationships are inextricably linked with multiple pathways associated with mortality. For example, excessive alcohol consumption is associated with poor social support. Moreover, individuals with positive social relationships engage in fewer risky health behaviors. Jessier, Turbin, and Costa, 1998. Glanz, Karen. Health Behavior, Theory, Research, and Practice, John Wiley & Sons, Incorporated, 2015. ProQuest eBook Central. http://ebookcentral.herokas.com/lib/howard/detail.action?.id =$7103893. Created from Howard on February 24, 2023, 5:30 and 39 seconds. Copyright 2015. John Wiley & Sons, Incorporated. All rights reserved. Trim size, 7 inches x 9.25 inches Glanz, C10.text V2, June 17, 2015, 10:24 a.m. page 193. Empirical evidence of the health effects of social support, 193. This means they are more likely to exhibit behaviors such as smoking cessation, seatbelt use, adequate sleep, healthy diet, regular exercise, and dental hygiene. Brumman et al., 2006, Femler et al., 2006. Therefore, these analyses eliminate one of the pathways by which social relationships may influence risk for mortality. The overall effect may also represent a conservative estimate because most studies fail to measure relationship quality. Thus, estimates likely include high and poor quality relationships. Potential detrimental influences of poor quality relationships are discussed next. Factors that may potentially moderate the influence of social support. Perceived and received support. Although social support is generally related to better health, in some circumstances, received support is unrelated or is even linked to negative health outcomes. Holt-Lundstad et al., 2010, Uccino, 2009. Many of the studies reviewed above that found links between social support and physical health are based upon measures of perceived support. In prior work, the concepts of perceived and received support have been used interchangeably, with the assumption that individuals high in perceived support also receive greater support. Dunkelschere and Bennett, 1990, Uccino, 2009. However, measures of perceived and received support are only moderately correlated, and hence seem to represent distinct constructs. Haber, Cohen, Lucas, and Baltas, 2007. Consistent with this possibility, a complicated set of findings emerges throughout these studies when examining measures of received support on health outcomes. For instance, several prospective epidemiological studies examining received support, especially tangible support, found it to be associated with higher subsequent mortality rates. Forster and Stoller, 1992, Kraus, 1997. This is also consistent with cross-sectional laboratory studies in which receiving support appears to be stress-enhancing. Example, Bolger and Omerel, 2007. Although a simple, plausible explanation, based on the concept of support mobilization, is that individuals who are more dependent on receiving support are simply more physically impaired to begin with, these studies do not appear to support this explanation, because most considers the influence of initial health status prospectively. Kaplan et al., 1994. It has been argued that the links between received support and health might be more contextual. Hence, stressor factors, example, match between stressor and support type, provider factors, example, relationship quality, and recipient factors, example, to independence, are important considerations. Bolger and Omerel, 2007, Dunkelscheder and Scopon, 1990, Uccino. 2009. All these factors can influence whether or not recipients see received support as responsive, and it has been argued that this is a key factor in the efficacy of received support. Maisel and Gable, 2009. Consistent with this possibility, the Midlife in the United States study, MIDAS, found that only when received support was viewed as unresponsive was it associated with higher mortality rates. Selchuk et al., 2013. This is an important issue, and future interventions should consider such issues in designing effective interventions. In fact, it is the component to receive tangible support that appears to be most consistently related to higher mortality. Forster and Stoller, 1992, Kaplan et al., 1994. Glanz, Karen. Health Behavior, Theory, Research, and Practice, John Wiley & Sons, Incorporated, 2015. ProQuest eBook Central, http://ebookcentral.herokas.com/lib/howard/detail.action?mark.id =7103893. Created from Howard on February 24, 2023, 5:30 and 39 seconds. Copyright 2015. John Wiley & Sons, Incorporated. All rights reserved. Trim size, 7 inches x 9.25 inches Glanz, C10.text V2, June 17, 2015, 10:24 a.m. page 194. 194 Chapter 10, Social Support and Health. Relationship quality. Another important issue is relationship quality. Much of the epidemiological evidence that has established the health relevance of social support did not take the quality of the relationships into account and assumed that all relationships. However, even though our relationships with others may be caring, considerate, and sources of warmth and love, these social relationships can also be demanding, insensitive, and sources of conflict and stress. Although the stress buffering model suggests that relationships can buffer the negative health effects of stress, it is also possible that some relationships may be sources of stress. Among the few epidemiological studies that examined relationship quality, findings indicate that negativity in social relationships predicts greater risk for mortality. Friedman et al., 1995. For instance, a study that followed 2,264 breast cancer patients for an average of 10.8 years found that while network support is associated with better prognosis, poor quality, and burden in family, relations was associated with higher risk of all-cause mortality. Krohn et al., 2013. Relationship distress may be particularly salient in the context of marriage, given the importance and amount of contact of this particular relationship. Indeed, a growing body of research among couples shows that despite the health advantage of marital status, distressed marriages are associated with greater morbidity and risk for mortality. Robles, Flatcher, Trombello, and McGinn, 2013. Relationship distress also has been associated with deleterious health-relevant processes, including immune dysregulation and delayed wound healing. Keeholt Glazer et al., 2005. High ambulatory blood pressure, and metabolic syndrome, Troxel, Matthews, Gallo, and Culler, 2005. There is also evidence that unsupportive behavior and partner distress are associated with poorer quality of life among women with breast cancer. Mann, Ostroff, Winkle, Reyna, and Fox, 2005. Likewise, interpersonal stress may be more impactful than other sources of stress. 4. Instance, the Stockholm Female Binary Risk Study found that after controlling for standard risk factors, marital distress was associated with a nearly a threefold increase in risk of recurrent events, whereas work stress was unrelated. Gomer et al., 2000. Technology and social support. Within the last decade, advancements in technology have led to dramatic shifts in the way social support is communicated. Griffiths, Callier, Banfield, and Tam, 2009. Meyer, Lyons, Friedman, Berlinza, and Reimer, 2007. Reimer et al., 2005. Use of the internet and smartphones is widespread in most developed nations and is now the primary form of communication. Research is now exploring equivalencies between technology-mediated and face-to-face communication and also the potential unique benefits of each approach to social support. There is some evidence to support both potential advantages and disadvantages of online compared to face-to-face support. Beyond merely connecting individuals at a distance, technology-mediated social support may have a number of potential advantages. For example, those with stigmatized conditions can seek internet-mediated support that allows them to remain anonymous. Malik and Carlson. 2008. Users of online forums can search previous posts for informational and emotional Glanz, Karen. Health Behavior, Theory, Research, and Practice, John Wiley & Sons, Incorporated, 2015. ProQuest eBook Central. http://ebookcentral.herokas.com/lib/howard/detail.action?mark.id =7103893. Created from Howard on February 24, 2023, 5:30 and 39 seconds. Copyright 2015. John Wiley & Sons, Incorporated. All rights reserved. Trim size, 7 inches x 9.25 inches gland, C10.text V2, June 17, 2015, 10:24 a.m., page 195. Health behavior application 195. Support, thereby reducing the burden for both provider and recipient, Rive and Bell, 2003, and individuals who are able to link up across geographic distances can create support networks around their specific support needs, rather than having to consider simple geographic proximity, Rainey and Wellman, 2012. Overall, these data point to the general utility of communicating informational and emotional support online, Dare and Green, 2011. More recently, evidence has also emerged that participation in the broader social network available online can promote well-being and provide a buffering effect during times of stress, Nicholas et al., 2012. Likewise, there is some evidence to suggest that individuals participate in online support groups to help others, Reimer et al., 2005, thereby increasing provision of support. We must also acknowledge that technology-communicated social support may be less effective than support or even have deleterious effects. For instance, there is evidence demonstrating that text messages, despite having similar effects psychologically to talking with someone about a stressful event, do not have similar physiological effects, Seltzer, Krasovsky, Ziegler, and Palak, 2012. Similarly, research examining use of the internet for support after a traumatic event found that despite perceptions of benefit, there was no evidence of an effect on psychological well-being, Vickery and Fraley, 2010. There is also evidence to suggest that the same technology that can facilitate support from others across geographic distance can also interfere with face-to-face support. For instance, the presence of a mobile phone in social settings may reduce closeness and quality of interactions, interfering with social support, Prabilsky and Weinstein, 2013. Of course, there is also the potential for internet-mediated support to undermine health, given the issues previously discussed for received support. See Chapter 17 for further discussion of the changing media environment in relation to health. Future research that directly examines the links between perceived and received internet-mediated support and physical health outcomes will be needed to make this final link. Taken together, this evidence has a number of important implications for social support interventions. First, we should consider several contextual factors, stress-related factors that may influence efficacy of support, support provider factors and characteristics, and support recipient factors and support desires. Second, the data on relationship quality show that researchers and practitioners must assess both positivity and negativity in the context of social support. Interventions aimed at increasing social support may have unintended detrimental effects if they fail to account for negativity of the support provided. Likewise, by reducing negativity and responsiveness, interventions may have larger effects than previously estimated. Finally, when designing an intervention utilizing online tools, it should not be assumed that it will be equivalent to face-to-face support. Health behavior applications. Theoretical models linking social support to help highlight the potential role of behavior, example, medical cooperation, and health behaviors, in linking support to disease outcomes, Uchino, 2006. We approach this by highlighting intervention-based evidence in two examples to illustrate modifiable consequences of social support on health behaviors. First, we summarize the evidence from a randomized clinical trial targeting diabetes peer support to improve glands, Karen. Health Behavior, Theory, Research, and Practice, John Wiley and Sons, Incorporated, 2015. ProQuest eBook Central, http://ebookcentral.herokas.com/lib/howard/detail.action?mark.id=7103893. Created from Howard on February 24, 2023, 5:30 and 39 seconds. Copyright 2015. Trim size, 7 inches x 9.25 inches glans, see 10.text v2 June 17, 2015, 10:24 a.m. page 196. 196 chapter 10, social support and health. Glycemic control, and second, we describe an intervention study that demonstrates the potential importance of social support in smoking cessation. Application 1, diabetic control. One way that social support may influence health is through its impact on diabetic control. Diabetes is among the leading causes of death in the United States and many other industrialized countries, and it can involve significant health complications, including heart disease, stroke, high blood pressure, blindness, kidney disease, neuropathy, and amputation. American Diabetes Association, 2015. Glycemic control is important to reduce the risk of these serious health complications. However, this requires significant self-management. Many diabetic individuals have elevated blood glucose levels as a result of poor self-management, despite receiving standard medical treatment. In an effort to examine the influence of peer support on diabetic control, a randomized trial was developed to compare guided peer support with standard nurse care, Heisler, Bijan, Mackey, and Keith, 2010. Participants comprised 244 men with type 2 diabetes and elevated blood glucose levels, defined as hemoglobin A1C, also called HbA1c or A1c, levels higher than 7.5% during the previous 6 months. Participants were identified and recruited from Veterans Affairs VA facilities. All participants, regardless of condition, received standard care management advice on managing insulin levels, had a 1C, blood pressure, and cholesterol levels assessed, and received educational materials. In the intervention group, the peer support condition, patients were paired with an age-matched peer to encourage both to provide and receive support. Participants assigned to this condition attended a 3-hour group session and were encouraged to call each other once a week using an automated telephone program to offer exchange of information, advice, and encouragement. The system recorded the frequency and duration of calls and prompted reminders if calls were not made within 7 days. The control group, nurse care condition, attended a 1.5-hour group session where they were encouraged to ask questions about diabetes self-management and medications, and to obtain information about management resources provided by the VA. Each was also encouraged to follow up with the nurse. Both groups were followed for 6 months, and changes in A1C were assessed to determine whether any significant improvement was achieved. Results from this randomized trial indicated that those in the peer support intervention group showed significant improvements in glycemic control relative to those in the nurse support-only group. The results showed both statistically and clinically significant changes. Follow-up tests were conducted on 212 participants for whom the researchers had complete data at 6 months to examine potential factors that might explain these findings and the types of patients most strongly impacted. Heat, Resnico, Choi, and Heisler, 2013. Specifically, the researchers examined perceived diabetic social support and insulin uptake as potential mediators, and they also examined health literacy, diabetes-specific social support, and diabetes-specific distress as potential moderators. Results suggested that the improvement associated with the peer support intervention were primarily mediated by insulin initiation, which accounted for nearly half of the improvement in A1C levels, but not by perceived glands, Karen. Health Behavior, Theory, Research, and Practice, John Wiley & Sons, Incorporated, 2015. ProQuest eBook Central, http://ebookcentral.herokas.com/lib/howard/detail.action?mark.id =7103893. Created from Howard on February 24, 2023, 5:30 and 39 seconds. Copyright 2015. John Wiley & Sons, Incorporated. All rights reserved. Trim size, 7 inches x 9.25 inches glans, see 10.text v2 June 17, 2015, 10:24 a.m. page 197. Health Behavior Applications, 197. Social support. Additional analyses were conducted to determine if this might depend on whether an individual was actually lacking social support and literacy. These analyses indicated that those with low diabetes-specific social support and low diabetes literacy had heightened improvement in A1C levels compared to the control condition. This is consistent with other work that has shown that social support interventions are particularly, and in some cases only, beneficial among those lacking adequate social support resources within their own network. Cohen, 2004. Although the intervention was associated with significant improvement, a closer examination of the frequency of the calls revealed a range between 2.4 and 0.8 calls per month, far less than 1 per week as planned. Pairing patients who were strangers to each other, particularly when their interactions, not face-to-face, might have been uncomfortable, making interaction less likely to be utilized. It should also be noted that this included only male participants. Prior research suggests that females may be more comfortable with both seeking and offering support and more likely to do so. Barbie, Gully, and Cunningham, 1990. Thus, it is possible that both provision of support and receipt of support may differ for females. It is possible that this already effective intervention could have been strengthened further by including women and using existing relationships. Cohen, 2004. Application 2. Support intervention aimed at smoking cessation. The relationship between smoking and increased mortality has been demonstrated unequivocally. U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, 2004. Smoking cessation is difficult, with high percentages of smokers attempting to quit and very low success rates. Cessation aids such as quit helplines have been demonstrated to be effective, increasing success 2 to 3-fold, yet are underutilized. Patton et al., 2011. Thus, the success of quit attempts could be dramatically increased if such resources were used. Given that social support has been correlated with smoking cessation, and many callers to smoking helplines are non-smokers trying to help a family member or friend quit, utilization of non-smokers as social support may increase smokers' use of helplines. In a randomized trial, the efficacy of boosting natural support networks to support the use of an evidence-based helpline was examined. Patton et al., 2011. Non-smokers interested in helping a friend or family member quit smoking were identified and randomized to the intervention. N equals 267, or control, N equals 267, group. Thus, the intervention was aimed at support providers and not the smokers. All participants were provided with cessation study ID number they could share with the smokers they were trying to help. With this study ID, all smokers they were attempting to help, regardless of condition, received the helpline number they could use for up to months after the intervention and were eligible for free nicotine replacement therapy and counseling, regardless of insurance. Participants, i.e., support providers, in the control condition received no further training. Participants assigned to the intervention condition received 3 training sessions that were aimed at encouraging the smoker to use the helpline and also encouraging any small steps toward quitting. Intervention effectiveness was determined by whether use of the helpline increased as a result of the participants' involvement in the intervention compared to the proportion of people who used the quit helpline among the control group. Gland, Karen. Health Behavior, Theory, Research, and Practice, John Wiley & Sons, Incorporated, 2015. ProQuest eBook Central, http://ebookcentral.hropas.com/lib/howard/detail.action?mark.id =7038993. Created from Howard on February 24, 2023, 5:30 and 39 seconds. Copyright 2015. John Wiley & Sons, Incorporated. All rights reserved. Trim size, 7 inches x 9.25 inches glands, C10.text V2, June 17, 2015, 10:24 a.m., page 198. 198, Chapter 10, Social Support and Health. Smokers in both groups were more likely to use the quit helpline than smokers not involved in the study. However, smokers linked to the intervention group were twice as likely to use the helpline as smokers associated with the control group. This difference held true across smokers of differing levels of readiness to quit. Supportive behaviors, however, were not a significant mediator of the intervention effect. Thus, it is unclear what processes accounted for the intervention effects. Although the study did not limit participation based on gender or relationship to the smoker, the majority of support providers were female, 79%, and were spouses or partners of the smokers. Thus, it is possible that the intervention may have capitalized on relationships in which there was significant contact and opportunity for social control. The intervention was aimed at having support providers encourage the use of evidence-based tools, rather than having them attempt to act as smoking cessation counselors or coaches, which has been unsuccessful in the past. Nonetheless, future research is needed to examine whether this translates to smokers' actual attempts or success at quitting. Future directions for research and practice. Several conceptual issues need greater attention in future research and interventions. As noted earlier, received support can be associated with negative influences on health if it is not seen as responsive. Selchuk et al., 2013. Interventions that seek to mobilize support from either similar peers or family and friends should be sure that support is responsive to individuals in order to provide either direct or stress-related beneficial links to health behaviors and related outcomes. See Figure 10.1. Quality of relationships is another factor that can influence the responsiveness of support. It has not been considered strongly in prior work. While our relationships with others may be sources of warmth and love, these social relationships can also be sources of conflict and stress, resulting in relationships that have a mix of both positive and negative qualities, i.e., ambivalent relationships. Prior work suggests that such ambivalent ties are related to less effective support provision and greater biological risk for disease. Holt-Lundstad, Uchino, Smith, Olsen-Cerny, and Nealey-Moore, 2003, Revlin, Uchino, and Smith, 2010. Besides not providing effective support, such ambivalent ties may be a source of stress in their own right, which may directly affect health. Holt-Lundstad, Uchino, Smith, and Hicks, 2007. Future work should give strong consideration to the quality of relationships, given that it may affect health-relevant support processes. Future research should also consider social support in the context of a changing social climate. Despite the increases in technology that would presumably foster social connections, people are reporting greater social isolation and loneliness. McPherson, Smith-Lovin, and Brashears, 2006. Given the increase in the extent to which individuals rely on digital communication in the form of online social networking, texting, etc., greater attention needs to be paid to the health relevance of online social support. Although this is a burgeoning area of research, there are still important gaps in our understanding. For instance, research must distinguish between social support gained from exclusively online relationships, example, online support groups and chat groups, and support from friends. It must identify individual plans, caring, health behavior, theory, research, and practice, John Wiley & Sons, Incorporated, 2015. ProQuest eBook Central, http://ebookcentral.herokas.com/lib/howard/detail.action?mark.id =7103893. Created from Howard on February 24, 2023, 5:30 and 39 seconds. Copyright 2015. John Wiley & Sons, Incorporated. All rights reserved. Trim size, 7 inches x 9.25 inches glans, C10.text V2, June 17, 2015, 10:24 a.m., page 199. References, 199. Differences, example extroversion or self-esteem, that may contribute to effectiveness, Van Zalt, Branch, Dennison, Van Aken, and Meas, 2011, and also the factors that enhance and those that detract from face-to-face support. Importantly, we must also recognize that because our epidemiological data collection, reported earlier, began prior to the widespread use of social media tools, it is presently unclear whether online social connections and contacts have protective effects on mortality similar to those seen for other forms of social support. Therefore, it will be important to examine what pathways may be capitalized on and what pathways may be absent when individuals seek or provide support using online tools. Summary. There is robust evidence that social support significantly and positively influences health and longevity and can occur through multiple types of support and various pathways. Epidemiology and experimental research suggests that not all aspects of social support are equally effective and that a more nuanced approach to social support is needed. A new generation of research is currently considering the role of technology in interpersonal functioning and utilization of social support, and the implications of that role for public health. Careful attention to these issues is needed in developing effective social support interventions. References: Ailshire, J.A., and Burgard, S.A., 2012. Family Relationships and Troubled Sleep Among U.S. Adults, Examining the Influences of Contact Frequency and Relationship Quality. Journal of Health and Social Behavior, 53, 248 to 262. American Diabetes Association. 2015, Statistics about Diabetes. http://www.diabetes.org/diabetesbasics/statistics/log equals DB/NAB Aspinwall, L&G, and Taylor, S.E., 1997. A Stitch in Time, Self-Regulation and Proactive Coping. Psychological Bulletin, 121, 3, 417 to 436. Barbie, A. P. Gully, M.R., and Cunningham, M.R., 1990. Support Seeking in Personal Relationships. Journal of Social and Personal Relationships, 7, 531 to 540. Bart, J., Schneider, S., and Von Cannell, R., 2010. Lack of Social Original article. Hostile marital interactions, pro-inflammatory. Cytokine production and wound healing. Janice K. Pico-Glaser, Ph.D., Timothy J. Loving, Ph.D., Jeffrey R. Stoll, Ph.D., William B. Malarkey, M.D., Stanley Lemichaud, Ph.D., Stephanie L. Dickinson, M.A.S., Ronald Glaser, Ph.D. Context. A growing epidemiological literature has suggested that marital discord is a risk factor for morbidity and mortality. In addition, depression and stress are associated with enhanced production of pro-inflammatory cytokines that influence a spectrum of conditions associated with aging. Objective: to assess how hostile marital behaviors modulate wound healing, as well as local and systemic pro-inflammatory cytokine production. Design and setting: couples were admitted twice to a hospital research unit for 24 hours in a crossover trial. Wound healing was assessed daily following research unit discharge. Participants: volunteer sample of 42 healthy married couples, aged 22 to 77 years, mean SD 37.04, 13.05, married a mean SD of 12.55, 11.01 years. Interventions: during the first research unit admit shown, couples had a structured social support interact tie-in, and during the second admission, they discussed a marital disagreement. Main outcome measures: couples interpersonal behavior, wound healing, and local and systemic changes in pro-inflammatory cytokine production were assessed during each research unit admission. Results: couples' blister wounds healed more slowly and local cytokine production, IL-6, tumor necrosis factor, and IL-1 was lower at wound sites following Mari-Tau conflicts than after social support interactions. Couples who demonstrated consistently higher levels of hostile behaviors across both their interactions healed at 60% of the rate of low hostile couples. High hostile couples also produced relatively larger increases in plasma IL-6 and tumor necrosis factor values the morning after a conflict than after a social support interaction paired with low hostile couples. Conclusions: these data provide further mechanistic evidence of the sensitivity of wound healing to everyday stressors. Moreover, more frequent and amplified increases in pro-inflammatory cytokine levels could accelerate a range of age-related diseases. Thus, these data also provide a window on the pathways through which hostile or abrasive relationships affect physiological functioning and health. ArchGen Psychiatry, 2005, 62:1377-1384. Marriage is the CEN trial relationship for the majority of adults, and morbidity and mortal IDY are reliably lower for married individuals than unmarried individuals across such diverse health threats as cancer, heart attacks, and surgery. 1-4 Although loss of a spouse through death or divorce can provoke adverse mental and physical health changes, 5-7 The simple presence of a spouse is not necessarily protective. A troubled marriage is itself a prime source of stress, while simultaneously limiting the partner's ability to seek support in other relationships. 8 The impact of a turbulent marriage is substantial. For example, epidemiological data demonstrates that unhappy marriages were a potent risk factor for major depressive disorder associated with a 20